When talking about the Oberth Class Starship, it's one of those vessels that Trek likes to show but not tell. We hear about the ship being a scout, being used in some military sense, and we know that it was present at the Battle of Wolf 359 and Sector 001. But when we observe it in the movies and series, when we see it on screen, and then listen to most of the other dialogue, regardless of what some Starfleet officers claim, it really makes me think that the ship is effectively a laboratory on warp nacelles. Well, and possibly used extensively for testing of critical systems destined to be on more powerful ships, and even in some intelligence black operations. But we'll get more into that later. While we could argue on whether the Oberth had other roles, we know definitively that the vessel's primary mission was for scientific research. The entire design made the Oberth extremely capable in conducting extensive scientific endeavors. The Oberth class would generally have a mix of both Starfleet and civilian personnel. While I think it was somewhat murky, there's evidence to suggest that Starfleet's role on the Oberth, at least initially, was more as ship's operations and protection, as would be suggested by general operating procedures for Starfleet of the time. We first see the ship active in the 23rd century, and Starfleet was more militarized during that time, and it makes sense that there would be divisions that simply ran the ship while the civilian scientists would mainly be the ones to conduct the tests. Now, of course, there would also be some Starfleet personnel that assisted in the research at the time. Though, as time moved on into the early 24th century, the ship would become more a mix of Starfleet science personnel and civilians. The ship would have a crew complement of anywhere from 5 to 80 officers and civilians. The vessel shows a classic Federation design, including a saucer section connected to a secondary hull, though it does have the odd structure of being connected via the nacelles. Interestingly enough, I wonder if a saucer separation was possible on this vessel. It certainly seems like a good design for it to happen. I couldn't find anywhere that spoke of or confirmed if the Oberth had shuttle bays, though based on the images of it, I highly doubt any were present. I've said it a couple of times, but everything about this ship screams scientific research and basically nothing else. Its shields are specially designed to withstand space better than other ships, and the ship itself is made of Victorium. Yeah, that's what it's actually called. It's called Victorium, which is an alloy that is specifically designed to resist spatial anomalies. Honestly, it's this type of ship that makes Starfleet feel more real to me. This high amount of specialization is what you would expect to see for a government that claims to be all about exploration, or one that would have ships of war and others of peace. According to the website Daystrom Institute Technical Library, the ship had a cruising speed of warp 4.0 and could reach a maximum warp of 5.8 for 12 hours. It's claimed that this is on the TNG scale, which seems dubious to me, but I also could not find any Alpha Canon resource that claims this warp velocity. For that matter, I really couldn't find any Beta Canon that would confirm it either. I'm sure it's said in an offhanded remark somewhere in the Next Generation, and that's all I'm going to see in the comments going forward. Interestingly, I do have a clip of the ship going at warp, but the speed can't be determined. Here, take a look.
Battle speed, Hortator. Battle speed!
The most advanced parts of the ship were its science labs, and I can't really say that enough. As we've discussed, the abilities of the Oberth were expansive and allowed for it to do amazingly accurate work when it comes to science and scientific studies. It, of course, was no Crossfield class, which, even though the Crossfield was designed before it, apparently could do everything God couldn't, but the Oberth is still a great little science ship. The vessel itself does lend itself to being more of a civilian-friendly model. What we observe in the ship when it comes to both its hallways and its quarters more resemble that of a Galaxy-class starship. Its bridge is perhaps the most Spartan, having a more reasonable design with the captain in the middle and surrounding consoles accessible to him and other officers. And truthfully, I think engineering is the same way. However, the rest of the ship is definitely more comfortable. When discussing the armaments of the ship, well, you guys get what I'm going to say. This thing sucks, and couldn't fight its way out of a paper bag. The only thing I was able to confirm in canon was that it does have a phaser bank. It has like one. That's literally it. One phaser bank. For a scout, that can only go warp 5. Maybe it can go warp 5, I mean, again, we don't know. When we look at the Battle of the Genesis Planet, or attack of the USS Grissom, whatever we're calling it these days, a Klingon bird of prey shot to disable the ship and destroyed it. And yeah, the dialogue says that it was a lucky shot, but come on. You shouldn't be able to get a lucky shot with shields at full and just the first hit. This ship was obviously not designed to take on a lawn chair, let alone a shot from a Klingon bird of prey. If I'm being generous, I would say that it is possible that we just haven't seen all the capabilities of the Oberth, and it is possible that the ship does have more than one phaser bank, though nothing on the ship really confirms this. Nor does anything suggest that it would have more than just one phaser bank itself. Looking at the lore of the Oberth, I honestly think that the vessel was created as a science vessel first, and considered a last resort as a scout. During the 23rd century, during the old guard of Starfleet Admiralty, the ship would be sent out with a more capable vessel during scouting missions. The Oberth could obviously not protect itself, so a guardian would be necessary. At least in my opinion. Again, there's no alpha canon to this, it just seems the most likely. And then as we moved from the 23rd century guard to the 24th century, and again moved from a soldier mentality of Kirk to one of pacifism with Picard, it was probably considered a ship that would be fine on its own. A ship that you could send to the Battle of Wolf 359 and Sector 001? Mainly because you're an idiot. All of this aside, I think it's more interesting to see what the ship was used for based on the dialogue and what we see on screen. We know that the Oberth had critical Galaxy-class systems tested on it, and we also know that Starfleet Intelligence used the Oberth to test an illegal cloaking device. What seems intriguing to me is that because of the science-like nature of the vessel, it was widely used as a testbed for all kinds of different equipment and tech, from the mundane to the top secret. A lot of people try to justify the fact that this thing was uselessly thrown against the Borg, that you could use its science to try to, I don't know, figure out the Borg or something that's not going to get you killed. But when you look at it as an unopposing ship in the background that did the real work for the Federation, it tested out systems, it made sure they worked before they went on the frontline ships. You used it for a lot of your intelligence operations. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if certain Prometheus systems weren't tested on the Oberth. When you take that into account, the ship becomes a lot more interesting, something that's unopposing and in the background, but critical to Starfleet operations. Again, a lot of this is based on dialogue, though we never see. Like I said, it's more tell but not show. But how cool would that make the Oberth instead of the laughingstock that it is right now? That's just a thought. Let me know what you guys think on it. The ship was also equipped with escape pods, though this was more for show and due to Union rules, as no crew would ever make it to the escape pods before the ship would be destroyed. Overall, the ship is known to be the equivalent of a redshirt, which is a shame because had they more fleshed it out as a little tugboat that was an unassuming hero of the Federation, I think you would have had a better story. Memory Alpha claims that confirmed named ships of the Oberth class include the USS Biko, the USS Cochrane, the USS Copernicus, the USS Grissom, the USS Oberth, which was a prototype but still had an NCC and not an NX. Huh, funny that. The USS Pegasus, the SS Russian name, the SS Viko, and the USS Yosemite. For those who want to impress their friends on Jeopardy, the ship appears 12 times, including 4 times in the Star Trek films, 7 times in The Next Generation, and in DS9's episode Emissary. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. A special shout out to all of my patrons and viewers like you. It takes both to ensure that I can continue to do this work. Without you, you wouldn't get this content and I'd have to do something else. So I do this full time because of you guys. Thank you so much. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.